Coming up on World News, what if your car could help steer you away from a dangerous accident? This isn't science fiction. The new crash avoidance technologies that could save thousands of lives, including yours. See it first on World News with Charles Gibson.
Good day, I am Charles Gibson at ABC News headquarters in New York. Welcome to the World News webcast. So we begin with the headlines. After a standoff that lasted nearly 2 weeks, the 15 British sailors and Marines captured by Iran have been freed, and they will head home tomorrow. The Iranian president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, said he was forgiving the troops and called their release a gift. Britain and the United States welcomed the news, which helped push oil prices down from recent highs. In domestic politics, the campaign of Senator Barack Obama announced a very large number today, $25 million. That's the amount of money they raised in the first 3 months of the year, on par with the $26 million raised by Senator Hillary Clinton. And ABC's Jake Tapper reports that Obama actually raised more money than Clinton if you count only the contributions available for the primary season and not the general election. Back overseas, Nancy Pelosi became the most senior U.S. elected official to meet with the head of Syria since President Bush took office. The Speaker of the House says she pressed Bashar al-Assad over Syria's support for militant groups and passed along a message she carried from the Israeli government. The Bush administration has objected to her visit, calling it counterproductive. And the thousands of victims of the devastating tsunami that crashed into the Solomon Islands early Monday may have to wait another couple of days for any significant amount of aid. Relief workers are warning that the need for fresh water is becoming urgent, but they do not believe that the death count, hovering around 30, will rise significantly. And you can check in with the World News broadcast for more on today's headlines.
Available anytime, anywhere you want it.
So today on the webcast, from a legendary football coach to one of the wealthiest women in the world, a peek into what you're searching for on Google. Also, the tiny town of Lumberton, New Jersey, population 12,000, and half the people who live in Lumberton are eBay sellers. We will pay a visit to that city. And the 21st century version of Bob Hope, a video diary from a band that went to Iraq to entertain the troops. It is a road trip they say they will never forget. But we're going to begin with the announcement today that caught even British diplomats by surprise, the release of 15 British Marines and sailors almost 2 weeks after they were captured by Iran. We begin in London with our senior foreign correspondent, Jim Sciutto.
So what led to the surprise resolution to the standoff? The British government insists there was no exchange, no quid pro quo to assure the captives' release. But there was a promise that this won't happen again, and you can expect conversations between British and Iranian officials in the coming days to avoid confusion in the future, so they know exactly where the line is drawn between Iranian and Iraqi waters. Prime Minister Tony Blair welcomed their release, but he chose his words very carefully. He did not thank the Iranian government. Rather, he spoke of the power of quiet diplomacy.
Throughout, we have taken a measured approach, firm but calm, not negotiating but not confronting either.
The sailors and Marines will arrive back on British soil tomorrow at noon local time, 7 o'clock Eastern, and they'll be greeted at Heathrow Airport by their families. Jim Sciutto, ABC News, London.
And I'm joined here on the set by our frequent contributor, the editor of Newsweek International, Fareed Zakaria. Jim just said there was no quid pro quo, that at least what the British are claiming. Believe it?
I do. I think fundamentally Iran blinked. It realized it had miscalculated. It had tried to do something to get the world's attention. The world has been ratcheting pressure up on Iran. But they miscalculated because it only convinced many people in Europe particularly that Iran was a reckless and dangerous country.
Miscalculated, Fareed, from what? What did they think they could get out of this?
I think they were looking at the last 2 months, during which the UN voted sanctions on them, Russia and China voted against them, the United States captured 5 Iranians, Russia suspended fuel shipments to them, and they wanted to, I think, send a signal saying, you can't just keep doing this stuff to us. We can do things that make your lives inconvenient too. But it was an unthought through strategy, and as a result foundered because it was only strengthening the resolve of those who felt Iran needs to be contained.
We mentioned that this announcement came at the end of a speech that was made by the Iranian President Ahmadinejad. Was he in control of the fate of these 15, or were others really responsible, do you think, for this release?
My sense is he was actually not involved in this. The people I talked to in both the British government and a few in the Iranian government said that it was largely being handled by the real leader of Iran. Remember, Iran is a theocracy, so the elected president isn't the guy running the country. The man called Khamenei, who has a National Security Council. It was done almost entirely through them. I think Ahmadinejad was allowed to announce the release almost as a favor to him because he had been cut out of the decision making.
And will we ever find out whether they were actually in British water, in Iraqi waters or in Iranian waters?
The Brits are very firm in telling me that they're absolutely sure they have 2 or 3 different GPS indicators that suggest they were not. It's important to point out the Iraqi government supported the British government's claim, which is to say, if the Brits were not in Iranian waters, the Iranians must have been in Iraqi waters.
Yes, exactly.
And the Iraqi foreign minister says indeed that was so. So I would guess that in this case the Brits are probably right, though the border has been contested for 30 years.
Indeed it has. All right, Fareed Zakaria, thanks as always for being with us. Next, we're going to turn to politics. There are a dozen candidates hitting the stump today in Iowa, including Senator Barack Obama, whose campaign contributions for the first quarter nearly matched those of Senator Hillary Clinton, long considered the best fundraiser in her party. So we're going to turn to our senior political correspondent, Jake Tapper, who is following the man of the hour in Mason City, Iowa.
We're here at North Iowa Area Community College, where later today Senator Barack Obama will hold a rally. He'll have a lot to celebrate, having announced today that his campaign has raised an eye-popping $25 million in the first quarter. To give you an idea of how that compares to Senator Hillary Clinton, who's the front-runner, Hillary Clinton has raised $26 million from about 50,000 donors, and about $4.2 million of that came from the internet. Obama has raised $25 million, almost the same amount, from 100,000 donors, so twice as many as Clinton's, and he's gotten about $6.9 million from the internet, more internet dollars than Clinton raised. To give you an idea of what $25 million can buy you, $25 million can get you 73,000 TV ads in Iowa, or in New Hampshire, 50,000. With $25 million, Obama can buy about 1 million copies of his best-selling book, The Audacity of Hope, or if he orders from Amazon.com, he can get the discount and get about 1.8 million. And even though Senator Obama is trying to quit smoking, if he wanted to, he could spend that $25 million on about 5.6 million packs of cigarettes. In Mason City, Iowa, I'm Jake Tapper for ABC News.
And I don't know quite how to follow that, but we're going to turn to our chief Washington correspondent now, George Stephanopoulos.
I don't want to follow that either, Charlie. Forget it, right?
Jake had his abacus out and was figuring, I don't know who wants to buy that many copies of a book, but that's all right. If I'm in the Hillary Clinton camp today, and I see that Obama has come within $1 million of an extraordinary fundraising effort that Senator Clinton made in the first 3 months, what am I thinking?
You're bracing yourselves for a big, long fight. Now, what the people in the Hillary camp say is that they've been prepared for this for a long time. They saw it coming, so they're not surprised, and they're not going to panic in response to it. But the key number there for me, Charlie, is the number of contributors. 100,000 contributors in a 10-week campaign, twice as many as a former First Lady whose husband is the most admired man in the Democratic Party right now. That is a sign that there is a lot of hunger out in the Democratic Party for someone new, someone different, and Obama fits the bill.
And where does this go from here? Can they sustain these kinds of numbers?
Historically, candidates don't sustain these kind of numbers in the second quarter. You pick up all the low-hanging fruit in the first quarter, you hope to, and you just try to hold on in the second quarter. But when you look at the number of contributors to Barack Obama who've given small amounts, $50 or $100, it shows he may have room to grow compared to Senator Clinton, where so many of her contributors, we don't know the exact number yet, have already maxed out. They've given to both the primary and the general election campaigns the full $4,600. So presumably, if Obama can keep the enthusiasm going, he does have room to increase these numbers, or at least hold them steady.
Yeah, that's a number that probably isn't in many people's minds. You can give $2,300 to the primary campaigns for one candidate and another $2,300 for that candidate in the general election. But if the candidate doesn't get to the general election, they have to give the $2,300 back, right, if they don't win the primary.
I think that's exactly right. They can't spend any of it during the primaries.
All right. Now, what does this do to the others? Edwards raised $14 million, and then there are the so-called lesser tier candidates, Bill Richardson getting $6 million, Biden, I think, $3 million, et cetera. Are they viable at this point, George, with those lower numbers?
The top tier is. I think, listen, $14 million is plenty of money to play in Iowa, which is the entire Edwards strategy, is winning in Iowa and hoping that'll catapult him to the nomination. Clearly, both Senator Clinton and Senator Obama are going to have plenty of money to get their message out all the way through, I think, that super-duper primary on February 5th. It's going to be tough for the other three, for Senator Dodd, for Senator Biden, for Governor Richardson, to hang in there. They're viable right now, but you might expect going into the second quarter that they're going to see an even bigger drop-off than the other candidates, and that could put them in real peril by the end of the year. But one more note, Charlie, when you add up all the Democrats together, they raised more than $80 million, which is twice as much as all the Republican candidates. That is brand new. In wide open races in the past, the Republicans have raised multiple times what the Democrats have raised.
It is just amazing what the table stakes are, though, right now in this presidential campaign. With the early primaries, it's going to take $75, maybe to $100 million coming out of this year at the end of the year to be a viable candidate.
And even that much money isn't going to be enough to pay to play in all those states on February 5th. New York, California, Illinois, New Jersey, Florida may move up to January 29th. There's no way you can raise enough money to run an effective campaign across the country like that early.
Money, the mother's milk of politics. George Stephanopoulos, thanks very much. Appreciate it. We're going to move next to our collaboration with Google, the world's leading search engine. And among today's top rising searches is Eddie Robinson, the legendary Grambling State University football coach who died last night. Over his 57-year coaching career, he won 408 games and sent some 200 players to the NFL. He once said that football teaches the lessons of life and tried to pass on messages that would guide his players on and off the field.
And this is what we want, a commitment to be the best. You write your own stories. Coaches can't make you great. You got to make yourself great. All right, let's go with them.
With me, just winning the ball game is not the thing. I want to win the guy. I want him to be a good father. I want him to be a good husband. I want him to be a good student. And I want him to be a good person.
And that's why people loved Eddie Robinson. He didn't want to win the game. He wanted to win the guy. He was 88 years old. Also rising today, Nina Wang, one of the richest women in the world. She died yesterday at the age of 69. Wang's story had all the elements of a Hollywood mystery. She inherited her husband's fortune after he was kidnapped and never found. Earlier this year, Forbes magazine ranked Nina Wang as the 204th richest person in the world in the communist nation of China. She died in Hong Kong with an estimated net worth of $4.2 billion and no children. Next, we turn to a town where the residents are trying to find their fortune online. To explain, ABC's John Berman.
I'm standing in the post office in Lumberton, New Jersey, population 12,000. It turns out that this town is the busiest eBay town in America. What does that mean? Well, per capita, more people buy and sell things in this town than any other town in America. In one 3-week period, there were 46,000 eBay transactions here. That's an awful lot. It beat out cities like Nashville, Las Vegas, other places. Now, here in this post office, Monday is the busiest day, and on a real busy day, as many as 200 packages come through here. People buying and selling anything. We saw someone buying and selling some Disney goods. We also saw a razor that was sold. There are children's clothes that are sold. Some people are doing this as a hobby, selling the trash from their garage. Other people are running a little bit of a side business to make an extra buck. Now, the big question is, why is this town of 12,000 people the busiest eBay town in America? The answer? No one really knows. The postmaster told me it's not like they put something in the water here. No one has any answer for that. Even eBay doesn't have an answer, but they do say they're happy that Lumberton has earned this distinction, and they're going to hold some kind of event here in May to celebrate that fact. John Berman, ABC News in Lumberton, New Jersey.
And finally from us today, entertaining the troops. 60 years ago, when the United States was fighting World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt created the USO. And the group sponsored hundreds of thousands of performances featuring the best-known entertainers of their day, like Bob Hope, and of course he's the best-known example. But today the military has been struggling to send big-name acts all over the world, so they've turned to smaller bands that are more willing to take risks and serve their country as best they can. We sat down with one of those groups.
Hi, my name is Ethan Isaac. My name is Jonathan Svek, and we are from the band Edison. When Ethan had called me and told me that we had gotten this tour, there was like an immediate excitement, and then he says his stomach dropped. My stomach just left the building because Iraq.
Reality hit when we flew from Kuwait up in a C-130 to the most northern part of Iraq. We were moving from base to base, and, you know, doors open on the Black Hawks.
Flying in a helicopter and putting on body armor is not something that we were used to doing.
When you play in the clubs in the U.S. and there's 4 or 5 bands on a night, you get your 35 minutes and, you know, people kind of come and they forget about you by the end of the night. You go over there, you have a captive audience, and you have a shot to actually make a difference with your music.
And there was one troop individual that came up to me, and he shook my hand, and with both hands, and he wouldn't let go. He said, "What you guys are doing, you have no idea how important this is. You know, God bless you guys for being here. Thank you so much."
They try to stay in contact with you too, and that's the one wonderful thing about MySpace, because we still have troops that you might not have talked to for a year that have not forgotten about you.
Basically, we all have our own opinions about the conflict, but the main reason is, you know, there are guys and girls fighting and dying out there, and it came down to it, we can bring something to them. We can bring them the home and the fun that they haven't had.